You know, Sonic's never really been quite the same since his jump to 2 screens. You want to hear something you've never heard before? Well, check this out. Sonic's adventures on home consoles through the mid to late 2000s were a bit of a mixed bag. Bet you never heard that one before, huh? The Game Boy Advance. While there wasn't much consistency going on with the console games, the GBA was where Sonic fans can rest easy, getting the Advance trilogy to satisfy those classic needs. They may not all be masterpieces, but hey, the team at Dimps walked that fine line of trying to do something new while staying traditional at the same time, so hey, I'll always be a fan of what they pumped out here. And when you wanted something extra and you wanted to dive into some spin-offs, well hey, Battle offered a decent, if not pretty mindless fighting game with a story mode that goes on for way too long. Pinball Party was a pinball game, so it was fine. And Sonic Genesis was allowed to exist. Happy anniversary, Sonic. But eventually it was time to move on. There was a lot of skepticism around the time for the DS. You know, you're retiring the Game Boy name. There's 2 screens on this new console. One of them is a touchscreen. That's really weird. And also, that original model is one of the ugliest things I ever did see. It is a miracle this thing succeeded. But thankfully, when we needed him most, we have good old Sonic to show us the potential of this brand new console with a tech demo. Attendees at E3 2004 were able to destroy the DS's touchscreen in order to see Sonic run in a straight line really fast. It's a miracle this thing took off the way it did. Nintendo DS tech demos are so interesting, man. There are so many of them, and most of them are lost to time, and super compressed internet videos are the only way we get to see what they were all about. The DS would go on to be one of the most successful consoles of all time, and this is how it started. This Sonic demo may be totally lame, but I'll be honest, still kinda cool. But when all is said and done, Sonic has graced the DS console, graced the DS console with a whopping 9 games, of a big variety too. You got the Sonic Rush games, a couple of spin-offs, there's even an RPG. What could possibly go wrong there? Starting things off, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the portable versions of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games and the Olympic Winter Games. Yes, the crossover of our dreams as we know it. Obviously, these are going to be lacking in production value compared to their home console counterparts, but for what they are, they're not that bad. That first game in particular is a great way to harness that original tech demo spirit and just destroy your poor touchscreen back and forth, rest in peace. But hell, I would go as far as to say the winter version is actually pretty good. It's got a story mode, and unnecessary story modes in my minigame collections give me life. But hey, I already talked about these as well as the 3DS titles in a different video back in 2019, so if you want more Sonic content, and we all know you want more Sonic content, that's the way to go. And actually, on a similar topic, why not get the other spin-offs out of the way? Sega Superstars Tennis and Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, where Sega does what Nintendo also does. Sega. A lot of Sega in that sentence. Racing is the game I'm more familiar with. I love fan service-based car racers, and this is a damn good one. Yeah, the sequel, Transformed, is a whole lot better, but this original is no slouch either. As for tennis, well, it's okay. It's tennis. But Sega's there. The big selling point for this one is definitely the minigame mode, where that traditional gameplay gets twisted and warped to work with classic Sega franchises like Monkey Ball and Puyo Puyo. Yeah, these may be shameless attempts to do things that Mario has already done and arguably has done better, but I'll be honest, it is simply nice to go back and remember a time where Sega cared about knights. Unlike the Olympics titles though, which gave their own spin on the gameplay of the more prominent console versions, the DS versions of these games are basically the same exact games, just on the DS. So take it easy everyone. For those of you who are in love with the poor 3D models in tennis, I am happy to report that has been maintained here in all of its glory.
Who are you? And how do you know my name?
Yeah, this is the same game, alright. The minigames are thankfully all here as well, and if you're looking for a worse looking version of this really fun game on the go, well boy howdy, this is the title for you. In my opinion though, it's almost more impressive that you can say the same thing about All Stars Racing. It's a kart racer that often runs at 60 FPS on the DS. I feel like that can't be understated enough because it is oddly unsettling to witness in person how smooth this game runs. My brain is so used to 3D games on the DS running a lot slower than this, but I'll be damned. They got it to work. It plays well, it looks really good, the soundtrack has been compressed, but it still sounds good. I am thoroughly impressed here. These portable versions had no reason to be as polished as they were, but good on these developers here. They really got to show their stuff. We did lose one of the Bonanza Bros in the process, though. Rest in peace, tall red guy. You will be missed. Next up, Sonic Classic Collection. I'll give you 2 seconds to guess what this one's all about. That's right, a collection of classic Sonic games. Who would have guessed? Nowadays, having an extra way to play Sonic 1 and 2 is certainly not that big of a deal. Why play Sonic 2 when you could play Sonic 2? Or hold on a second, Sonic 2. But you gotta remember, this was the next official way to play the first game on a Nintendo Portable after Sonic Genesis on the GBA. That alone made this collection worth the price of admission. But yeah, it's just the main Genesis classics here on the DS. Not without its problems though, the shrunken down screen is pretty weird on the eyes, the special stages in Sonic 3 damn near made me vomit, and for some reason, rather than speeding up the music for the speed up shoes, it just raises the pitch. Ew, I hate it. But let's be real, you don't get this collection expecting the best way to play these games. For what it is, Sonic Classic Collection ain't bad. Interestingly enough though, this is one of the last times Sega has acknowledged Sonic 3's existence. Quite frankly, in the year 2020, it seems like Sega wants nothing to do with it. And considering the PS3 and 360 collection was also lacking the locked-on Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I gotta tell ya, it's really weird seeing that and Knuckles and Sonic 2 right here on the DS front and center with some entirely new logos too. So major points to Sonic Classic Collection, one of the final times Sega has acknowledged Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Maybe one of these days we can show this to Sega and just scare the hell out of them. They'll think it's a ghost. But of course, when you think of Sonic on the DS, it's the Sonic Rush trilogy that takes center stage. There was so much going into the first game's favor when it was brand new. At the time, Shadow the Hedgehog was the game console fans had to look forward to, so yeah, seeing the guys who made the advanced game sticking to a side-scroller while taking advantage of the new 2-screen setup, oh boy, I'm in. New character too, Blaze the Cat. At a time where Sonic became friends with basically everything that so much gave a glance towards his direction, Blaze is a big standout, being, in my opinion, one of the best friends the franchise has seen yet. She's a princess from another dimension, and she controls fire, and she can do one hell of a spinning kick. What's not to love here? She even comes with her own alternate universe Eggman. These eggs can multiply. That's terrifying. The structure of Sonic Rush is super familiar too. Just go from zone to zone, 2 acts, and a boss in each. Find special stages throughout the levels to get Chaos Emeralds. We got the good old half pipe once again, but this time it's with touch control, so that's kinda cool. This is all a recipe for success. Rush is the literal name of the game here though. Just build up that meter on the side, push a button, and then boom. Fast. It's really no surprise here. This is the next logical step after the speeds that you can reach in the later advanced games. This makes total sense. And clearly the main teams at Sonic Team took notice because it would be a few years after where the boost mechanic would show up in the home console games as well. And when Sonic Rush is good, it is so exhilarating, man. You can pull off a bunch of tricks too just by mashing the buttons when you're in mid-air off of a ramp. Oh, it's pretty good. The game is also notorious for its 2-screen setup too, and it's pretty cool. All of the action takes place across both screens at all times, and swapping back and forth can be kinda satisfying. Playing something that feels like you can only play it on the DS is pretty cool in my opinion. The thing is though, I believe this is an instance of nostalgia playing a weird game with my brain. The mechanics are certainly a lot of fun, but the level designs... yeah, not so much. The further you progress in this game, the more just garbage clutters up the entire experience. Sometimes the game penalizes you for going too fast. When boosting is the main selling point here, yeah, I don't really like this. Altitude limit. Oh my god. This is one of the worst levels I've played in my entire life. Also, maybe it's just me, but a lot of these levels do nothing for me. When I want a quality zone in a Sonic game, I want something that really stands out with a bunch of gimmicks that make that level feel unique. Here, those gimmicks are there, but they're really minor, so a lot of the levels you go through feel like you're speeding by a different wave of colors than the level you were just in. That's it. Just a different visual and maybe one different type of platform. That's about it. Blaze, with her fire abilities, does make the platforming a little bit more bearable, but personally, I also find it pretty annoying that you basically have to play the entire game twice in order to get to the main ending. Except this time the levels are in a slightly different order. There you go. Not that monotonous. Also, she has no special stages. That's kinda odd. I'm already replaying the entire game a second time through. It's weird that the special stages are where the line was drawn. She simply gets her soul emeralds through the story instead. Pretty anticlimactic. And while the soundtrack is definitely a jam thanks to the Jet Set radio composer stepping in to do the tunes, in-game? What? Man, the boss fights aren't that good either. A visual treat for sure, always admirable seeing so much 3D in my DS games, but they're so not fun. And they take so long to get through also. Most of them are just waiting games before you can attack them once and then you wait some more. And then the final boss of the solo stories. Oh my goodness. You see, I streamed myself playing the game live, and I'm pretty sure, as my viewers can attest, this battle probably took 5 years off my life. Alright, I just came out. That was just a net negative right there. Okay. Not going particularly well. So many of its moves are pretty unpredictable to work around, and then there's this weird mechanic where the more you get hit, the further rings will fly out of you. Listen, I may just not be good at this fight, that's fine, but having the game rub it in by throwing the rings further away every time I get hit, not a good feeling. Thankfully, the true final boss is a little bit better. Super Sonic and Burning Blaze get to attack the main bad guy hand in hand, and it's pretty cool. It kinda reminds me of Sonic Adventure 2, where Shadow would go super out of nowhere. Blaze has her own super form. Pretty cool. Sonic Rush is another style over substance deal. The boost mechanic is cool, the music is great whenever you get to hear it. I do actually enjoy those special stages quite a bit, but as a whole, this adventure leaves a whole lot to be desired. Speaking of adventure, releasing 2 years later we got a direct sequel with Sonic Rush Adventure. There you go, Sonic Adventure 3. Isn't that title screen music just the best? Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like it. On the surface, it definitely feels like more of the same, but in practice, oh man, I like this game a whole lot more. That core gameplay was so enjoyable in the last game, but too many little things detracted from the experience, and Rush Adventure sets out to fix a lot of those things, while introducing a few of its own problems because of course it does. It all ultimately comes down to the level design. I feel like there was a whole lot more care and attention put into making sure you're able to rush through these levels with ease, and not have to constantly worry about being dimsed by something you didn't see coming. I don't think I saw any out-of-nowhere garbage until the very end of the game. We're not pitching a perfect game here, but it's pretty close. Only at the finish line did I see some shenanigans. An extra impressive feat because those stage gimmicks that I mentioned being pretty lackluster before are way more pronounced here. Every stage is home to things that make these locations a whole lot more special. There are just so many unique ways that the game gets you from point A to point B without ever really stopping your speed. That's the important part. Hell, I even think the bosses are better. Not amazing, but I had a much better time with this bunch than the last. The final boss is still pretty whack though, but hey, it's not as whack, so I'll take that as a positive. We do have another one of those friend things though with Marine the Raccoon, who's not terrible, but man, she is there and gone in nearly the blink of an eye and nothing of value was really lost. Kinda weird, we've never seen her again. I just hope she's okay. And personally, I also prefer this soundtrack too. I know that may be a bit of a hot take, but if it's any consolation, you still can't listen to it in-game. But of course, we can't have too much of a good thing here. There is a whole lot of fluff added to fill out the gameplay time. It is pretty shameless, honestly. Rather than simply going from one level to another like we just did in the game before it, now the story revolves around traveling to a whole bunch of different islands, many of them being home to the different stages. And to get there, what, you thought you would just warp onto it? No, of course not. It's time to pull out the boats. On your travels, you get access to 4 different aquatic vehicles, each one allowing you to travel further from your home base, and each of them giving you a quirky little way to occupy your time when you're on the water on your way to get there. 100% filler nonsense that did not need to be here. The island concept is really nice. It sort of contextualizes all of the areas that you travel to, but getting there, nah man, this ain't it. That being said though, I still didn't hate these. I can admit this has absolutely no place being here whatsoever, and I wouldn't miss it if it was gone, but for what they are, they're not bad. The real problem comes from needing materials to craft these machines and their upgrades. You gain a handful of these at the end of each level based on your rank, and you are bound to not have enough to get the job done when a specific request comes through. Like in the special stages, which are all these races with this shark guy. Some call him Johnny. It is damn near required to have the best version of your watercraft in order to win the race. So you know what that means, grinding. In a Sonic game. To make matters worse, you don't even get to choose which machine is the next one in line to get an upgrade. You have to upgrade every ship in order before it cycles around to the one you want. That sucks, man. If you're decent at the main levels and explore all of these extra islands that provide these shorter challenge levels, the time that you'll be spending actually replaying full levels isn't that long, but it shouldn't be here in the first place. The main adventure, when you're just trucking along level to level, getting to see the sights and sounds of all of these different islands with these cute little story cutscenes that pop up from time to time, it's a really good experience. Once the game forces you to slow down and start grinding for materials, man, that's when the cracks in the shield start to form. And all of this extra fluff, it is a miracle they don't require you to go through the game a second time as Blaze like in the first one. She's here. For story purposes, she does in fact show up, and there are a handful of missions where you're required to play as her to get the soul emeralds, but otherwise, she's totally optional. And those missions, by the way, holy cow, there is so many of them. There's like 100 in this game. Oh man, why? Why does this game have this much content? Oh, and speaking of story, you remember the villain, right? Captain Whisker? Who even cares about this thing, man? The one boss fight you have with him, with Johnny, is like so mindless and terrible. It is a joke. And it doesn't even matter. Once you get all the emeralds, it turns out the Eggman brothers are the true final threat. We got Dr. Wily right at the finish line. What a muddled up game Sonic Rush Adventure is. I guess it's all just a matter of how much extra stuff you're willing to put up with. Like I said, the core gameplay is a blast, definitely better than the first game in my opinion. But if you don't like any of this boat stuff, which I wouldn't blame you for not liking it, you're not going to be down with this new adventure. Myself, on the other hand, I do really enjoy all of this. This island aesthetic and the extra gameplay reinforcing said aesthetic really pushes the idea of this being a full-blown adventure rather than simply a level pack. I remember this game also released close to Phantom Hourglass as well, two games that revolve around exploring the waters on a boat via drawing out a path on the touchscreen. So yeah, these two games will forever be correlated in my head. What a 1-2 punch this is. And sadly, Rush Adventure would be the final time Blaze the Cat would have a spotlight. Easily the biggest potential for a major Sonic character since Shadow the Hedgehog, only to, after this, be relegated to just another female character in the Sonic universe. To say huge missed potential would be underselling it, but for what it's worth, her time in that spotlight, pretty strong showing all around. We're gonna keep Sonic 06 out of this discussion, thank you very much. But like I said before, this is a trilogy here. Things aren't over just yet. Wrapping up this hat trick, we have Sonic Colors. Yeah, we may be dropping the Rush name, but look at this. This is Rush 3, come on now. There are some minor differences here. The homing attack is a whole lot more prominent. The boost is back, of course, but only to be received by the Wisp capsules like in the console version. And the trick system is gone. Thank goodness, we can actually hear the music in this one. And since this is Sonic Colors, of course this means all of the other Wisps show up as well. I actually really like the Wisps. In Sonic Colors at least, their inclusion makes a whole lot of sense. Them being constantly reused over time because they couldn't come up with any other power-ups, that doesn't make much sense, but here, perfect. Just like in the Wii version, they complement the levels they're in great. All except the drill though. My god, that drill music is just the worst, isn't it? The DS version is also home to two exclusive Wisps. There is the Burst, which turns you into a fireball that can make these big explosions and perform mid-air jumps in the process, and the Void, turning into a very slow-moving black hole that will suck up anything in its path. They're not really in the game for that long, so their inclusion does feel pretty glazed over, but hey, for historical purposes, kinda neat that there's two Wisps in this version that aren't in the main console version. But other than that, there's really not much to say about this one, outside of it's just a solid adaptation of Sonic Colors on the DS. It goes by super quick too, 2 levels and a boss in each zone, just like the first Rush game. You blink, and then look at that. Game's over. To this game's credit though, there are plenty of optional missions that are extra that you can take part in. And these all feature cameos from other characters. Something definitely missed from the console version, which only exclusively had Sonic and Tails. This is also where we get to meet up with Blaze once again. No gameplay, no real story significance, just a tiny cutscene. Due to the level structure, you can actually argue that this game is way better paced than the Wii game, which infamously had 6 acts per zone, many of them having repeating level elements. This whole short main game with plenty of optional missions concept is definitely the better approach to a Sonic game in my opinion. And you know what? I love these special stages too. Yeah, it's the half pipe once again, but the way it works this time around is it's in 3 laps, counting only one of the 3 colored orbs each lap. You can run into the other orbs, but it could potentially screw over your following laps. It's a pretty cool take on a tried and true special stage. The end of the game is totally different too. That big Eggman color robot is here like in the Wii game, but after getting all of the Chaos Emeralds, rather than simply playing as Super Sonic in normal stages, we unlock a totally new final boss, the corrupted Mother Wisp. It's a neat little extra, I guess, to make this version stand out a little bit more, but really, this fight does absolutely nothing. As quickly as this thing shows up, it's defeated, and nothing of value was gained or lost. I guess at this point, Sonic fans were already conditioned to save Super Sonic for the final boss, and that's it, but yeah, it's just whatever. But the Mother Wisp does show up in Team Sonic Racing, so I mean, that's something. I think I would still say I prefer the Wii version of Sonic Colors, but for a portable version of a console game, this is a pretty good one. You are definitely going to want to remember that when I eventually talk about the 3DS games. So yeah, so far Sonic's legacy on the DS, pretty solid. A couple of these games are just weaker versions of already existing console games, but whatever, when you're strictly sticking to the DS bubble, this is a really good lineup. And it would really suck if one final game ruined the whole batch. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. Oh god. Alright, fine. You know, once we start throwing Sonic into scenarios that Mario's already done before, doing an RPG, this was inevitable, right? I mean, hey, BioWare too, that's pretty cool. That is a reputable name, right? Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Knights of the Old Republic, what could possibly go wrong? I am really starting to rethink this whole let's play every Sonic game on DS thing. You know, I do gotta give credit to the developers on this one. The story is presented like an early 2000s Newgrounds animation. That's a really clever way to appeal to the hardcore Sonic fan base. I appreciate that. Oh my god. This music is incredible. Well, the entire game is touch controlled, and every action feels delayed beyond belief. This should be good. I mean, it kinda goes without saying here, but wow, does this ever feel like a prototype that somehow made it to retail? 3D models running along flat images, that's fine, but man, said models are not very good on your eyes if you get a good look at them. The ring audio is very loud. The sound crackles when you get an item after a battle. All of the characters' portraits and cutscenes have an outline, except they forgot to give one to Big. Poor guy. For some reason, you get these super strong healing items within the first 30 minutes of the game, really enforcing the idea that this team had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And I'm also pretty sure Sonic rips a fat one halfway through this ramp. Absolutely disgusting. And did I mention that the soundtrack is one of the greatest to grace all of video games? Oh, Mozart would be spin dashing in his grave. Maybe some of this exploration would be more enjoyable if it wasn't required to use the touchscreen, but when you really think about what you're doing, it's pretty mindless. There is no depth whatsoever to any of these locations. You just keep moving towards a point of interest, and you hope that the action that you take is what leads to progression. And the battle system. Oh man, the battles. Truthfully, I don't know how many RPGs do this, but here, you gotta set up like 3 or 4 moves ahead of time for every single character, with absolutely no way to really predict what the opposing side is gonna do. You commit to attacking 4 times in a row, and then whatever happens, happens, man. You could die, you could not, who knows. You gotta hope those special POW moves really do a lot of damage, because you can only do like 1 of these before needing to pop an item and get your points back. And I also hope you're really good at Elite Beat Agents, because you basically play Elite speed agents to get some of these moves done. Except the graphics are kinda laggy, so your timing on these is just a rough estimation. Sonic Chronicles is simply not fun. Plain and simple. I know, big surprise. This feels like a bad RPG Maker game gone official, and I do not understand how this happened. It is an RPG, so you think the story would be kind of important, but it's not. There's like this evil Echidna tribe that's trying to use the Master Emerald's power for something, I don't know. The game ends with the cliffhanger and the sequel never happened. Probably for the best. I mean, the new Echidna character, Shade, is pretty well designed. That's the best compliment I got for this game. Outside of the soundtrack, that still is a jam though. Okay, I take that back. The only good thing about this game is the dialogue, where BioWare's patented multiple choice options shine through, and you can make Sonic an absolute jerk. It's amazing. Even in the tutorial where Tails is trying to help you, choose one of the other tabs. Maybe it'll help Amy feel better. I don't want to make her feel better. Since we just defeated a tough opponent, this might be a good time to save your game. Stop reminding me, I'll save when I'm ready. Knuckles is the finest guardian of the Master Emerald ever. Whatever, Amy. Oh man. Oh, Sonic is as cold as he is blue. Maybe one day we'll get a good Sonic RPG. That day ain't today. And just the wildest part about this whole thing is back when this game was new, it was showered by like these really positive reviews. How? I don't know, maybe it's all relative. You know, back in this time, a lot of people weren't thrilled with Sonic games, so having something different by a different studio, maybe that was the saving grace that is totally lost in this current year. I don't know, maybe I'm just the crazy one. Sorry, that sounded foolish. I couldn't possibly be the crazy one. I just talked about 9 Sonic games back to back in roughly 25 minutes or so. I'm the sane one. I am gonna really hate saying this. Okay, hey, did you know that Sonic's had a rough history since his jump to 3D? Why do people still watch me? The Nintendo DS. When it came to the Blue Blur's adventures on the original 2-screen console, it was a pretty interesting set of forays, that's for sure. The Rush trilogy was obviously the star of the show there, all being pretty good for different reasons. Still a massive fan of Rush Adventure all these years later, I have no problem admitting that this game is fantastic. But once we move beyond that and take a look at the tennis and racing ports and Chronicles, oh god, the entire lineup definitely leaves much to be desired. Trying to fit the speed and energy of the Sonic universe on the DS was clearly more challenging for some developers than others. But hey, we're finally moving up in the world now. We have more powerful hardware. The potential to actually make 3D games is a lot easier now as well. The 3DS is surely gonna blow us away with Sonic goodness. They ported Sonic 2 to it. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, you were asking for new versions of Sonic 1 and 2 that weren't the mobile versions, right? Of course you were. Sega heard our cries loud and clear. Being honest, this does make a little bit more sense than I'm giving it credit for. You gotta remember, Nintendo did that whole line of 3D classics for some NES games, including Urban Champion for some reason. Well, Sega did the same thing. As I like to say, Sega does what Nintendo also does. They may not be the mobile versions, but they're also not mere ports. You push up that 3D slider, and the zones get extra layers of depth. It's pretty cool. It's like I'm really playing Sonic 2. Not being in widescreen is a shame since, once again, the mobile version. But I mean, this is fine. It does kind of make it tough to go back to the original Sonic 2 special stages though, to be honest. They are totally trippy in 3D, but they're not as smooth as the mobile version, which I'm more accustomed to now. It's hard to go back to this. The thing is though, a lot more Sega games got this treatment than Nintendo did for their games, and a bunch of them, including Sonic 1, got thrown into a physical edition with the Sega 3D Classics collection, featuring just gorgeous art by the big Pokemon artist Ken Sugimori. It is so good. Sonic 2 did show up physically as well, but only in the 3rd installment of this collection, which never left Japan, so that kind of stinks, but hey, more cool art to look at. That collection also has Gunstar heroes, dude, that's dope. And yeah, there's no Sonic 3 in sight either. point to the original DS, I guess. Like the Sonic on DS video that I did before, we are going to acknowledge that the Olympics games exist, but I did give them their own dedicated video. You can go ahead and check that out at a different time. But on a similar topic, we do have the racing game on 3DS with Transformed. Now I have very high hopes because the DS's All-Star Racing was really, really good. This should be fantastic as well. But it isn't! Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed is one of those games that released on nearly every single console back at the time. And since the 3DS was still the weakest of the bunch, it was obviously not going to hold a candle to the console versions, and yep, that's what we got. It was never going to compete with the quote main version, but even still, I feel like they could have done better. Transformed 3DS is still a good kart racer, but everything in this port just feels so choppy and rough. Doing a side-by-side comparison with the original All-Stars Racing on the older DS that somehow ran at 60 FPS, it's a lot harder to justify this game when it's not as smooth as I feel like it should be. All of you PlayStation Vita fans, rejoice though, the game looks and runs fantastic there. Point to the Vita. It's probably far too late to give points to the Vita, but I'm gonna give them one anyway. But if somehow the 3DS is all you have, well, it's fine. And I know you're asking about it. Yes, Danica Patrick is still here in all of her glory. Thank goodness. Hey, maybe at least there's some people playing online. Wow, a big old nothing on that one. I know, I'm just as shocked as you are. But much like how the DS era was defined by the Rush trilogy, the 3DS era was defined by 4 games, 2 with standard Sonic and 2 with Boom Sonic. Oh no. Let's start with the normal Sonic here. These games did release first after all. We have 2 games based on console games here, one based on Generations, a game that I love, and one based on Lost World, a game that I don't. Getting it right out of the way, I can't help but think that Generations 3DS is a beacon of missed potential. The concept of the main game is here as you would expect in all of its glory, locations through Sonic's different eras, playable in a classic and modern style. Though due to the console's early limitations, we ultimately just have 2 different styles of the same 2D Sonic. One is just slower than the other one. A few stages in, classic Sonic even gets the homing attack, further blurring that line of the entire idea of tackling levels in a classic or modern way and them feeling kinda different. Classic does get the homing attack in the console version, but as an unlockable after beating the game, not a core element of the character's abilities. Relying on the homing attack for classic Sonic I don't know, man, it just feels wrong, and it starts to remind me of Sonic 4. And yeah, that's not a good thing. For modern Sonic though, I get it. In the portable scene, modern is more tied to Rush, so the gameplay style definitely fits, but the main issue then comes down to that level design. It's all just so unremarkable in my opinion. It rarely feels like you ever have to use any sort of platforming or reflexing muscle here. You just kinda brute force your way to the end every time. There's definitely speedrun potential there like any other Sonic game, but in comparison to the main game, yeah, this is nowhere near as fun in my opinion. It also doesn't help that the adventure starts off with a pretty poor impression. The classic versions of the classic era stages are legit copy and pasted from their Genesis counterparts. And since classic doesn't control exactly like he did back in the day, which would be fine if the levels were built around him like in the console version, when I was playing these, I was just wishing I was playing those Genesis counterparts. There is the occasional flashy gimmick in these stages to give it some extra flair, like this grinding section in Mushroom Hill that's all automated, but these moments really don't amount to a whole lot. In its own bubble, Generations 3DS is fine, I guess, but it misses the mark in so many areas. The soundtrack is pretty good. I mean, that much is kind of a given, but it is just not a game I could recommend. While I could recommend the main Generations all day, any day. And yeah, okay, I'm gonna fanboy out for a little bit. I also really wish they actually took advantage of Sonic's portable history for his portable anniversary game. It seemed so obvious. You could have put in Sunset Park from Triple Trouble, Music Plant from Advance 2, Plant Kingdom from Rush Adventure, you bring back Fang and Emerl as mini-bosses, Eggman Nega as a main boss, reference Tails' Adventure somehow. There is so much they could have pulled from with Sonic's portable history. Don't even act like that wouldn't be hype, by the way. Sonic Mania gave us Bark the Polar Bear, and we all lost our minds at the sight of him, so don't lie. But instead, we race Metal Sonic in Casino Night and Silver in Tropical Resort. What history are we pulling from here? Radical Highway from Adventure 2. Okay, that was a really good stage, but if we're gonna be technical here, that was not Sonic's stage, it was Shadow's. And even still, in this game, it has some of the worst level design in the entire package, and also musical farts. Yeah, Sega, thanks for that. Although the fight with the Bio Lizard is pretty cool. Again, it was originally a Shadow thing, but once I stopped complaining about the incredibly deep and intricate Sonic lore, I will say I did enjoy this fight. We got Tropical Resort here too. Okay, fine, you know, Colors is also on the DS, and we also have Water Palace from Sonic Rush. That shows up as well, and it is actually my favorite stage in the entire game. But once again, I really wish they went further with this idea. The game would still probably have rough edges out the wazoo, but hey, we would at least get a really dope soundtrack out of it. And speaking of, the biggest disappointment here is the Big Arms boss fight. I mean, it is pretty underwhelming, but it is the first boss fight, so that's not really the problem. It's the fact that the remix of the Big Arms theme by Cash Cash is fantastic, but the really good part of the song doesn't come in until well after this incredibly short battle ends. Sega, you're killing me here. Maybe I am just a bit too bitter here because I've played so many Generations and Mania mods at this point, but I still really love everything about the vanilla Generations. The 3DS one though, yeah, no, not for me. Oh man, I can't fathom how I'm gonna stomach Lost World 3DS now. Hell, at least I like the console generations. Console Lost World drove me nuts. And the verdict? Yeah, the game is actually alright. Sonic on 3DS is quite the anomaly. Immediately, Lost World 3DS gets the upper hand simply because it's actually fully 3D. 3D platformers are few and far between on the system, there's barely any of them, and for the most part, this actually controls pretty well. For the most part. So very similarly to the console version, starting Lost World is pretty thrilling. The controls are solid despite needing to hold down the run button to move quickly, something not super comfortable on the 3DS as opposed to an actual controller. The art style is somewhat interesting, the music is really catchy, the parkour mechanics start to show a lot of potential. It does follow a lot of the same beats as the console version, but the level designs are totally new. But we are still talking about Lost World here. At the end of the day, thematically, this is basically the new Super Mario Bros. Of Sonic games here. Grass, desert, lava, snow, it's all here. And we don't even have the desert stage and the desert level from the console game, which was like the best part about it. Most of the 3D levels feel very similar to each other, most of the 2D levels feel very similar to each other, but things are solid enough to make it work. And then you keep playing. It's really the Lost World curse, man. The further in you get, the more the cracks start to show. Why is the homing attack almost too reliant, sometimes focusing on things you really didn't want to that are off screen? And speaking of, why is the homing attack nerfed at all? Some enemies, the homing attack isn't effective until you do this weird energy wave attack thing, and then you can attack them, and it is just one of the many things this game does to drag the speed to a crawl. Being chased by a huge sentient snowball, pushing fruit into specific holes, all of these dumb wisp power-ups that force you to use the motion controls with no options to disable them, that's not fun. Zavok exists. This may be slightly different than the version that I'm familiar with, but it is still the same Lost World at the end of the day. Though this game does have an exclusive hard mode, but I really don't want to play through the game again with more frustrations, I'll be honest, so I'll just say neat and move on. When you are just controlling Sonic doing your platforming thing, it is actually really enjoyable, and I still think there is a bit of novelty to a fully 3D game on the 3DS. That alone is really cool. But man, all of these gimmicks that they couldn't help but throw in here, it really stops this game from being any better than it is. It's not as all over the place as the console version, but it's still not great. The lows don't necessarily get as low, but the highs also don't get as high. This is mostly a decent companion piece, all things considered. Oh dear god, I forgot about the special stages. These are the worst. You're like flying through space and there are these colored orbs all around you and you have to actually rotate your entire body to get them because you can't disable the motion controls. These are the worst special stages of all time. I don't know, man, is this a hot take? I can't tell. I'm too busy kinking my neck. This whole getting Dimps to do a portable version of a console game instead of doing their own thing concept started way back with Sonic Colors on the DS, which took the mechanics of the successful original games, Sonic Rush, and merged it with the core ideas of Sonic Colors, which I thought was great. Generations and Lost World on the 3DS, on the other hand, don't share that same vibe. It just feels like they were desperately struggling to squeeze as much of the main game's identity into the handheld without taking advantage of the opportunity they had to step out of the console version's shadows. those. You're actively playing just weaker versions, either because you lack the hardware to play the proper versions, you're really nostalgic for these versions, or you have a dumb, morbid curiosity like me. Divisive is the easiest way I can describe both of these games. So while I am sure plenty of people do enjoy these, I am on the other side of that conversation. If they truly wanted to allow more fans to experience these games, we should have gotten a bit more quality control. Or just let dimps do their own thing again, man. Or what, we're gonna have more people nostalgic over original games like Sonic Rush? Can't have that. That being said, if you really want to find quality for Sonic on 3DS, you don't have to look at the original Sonic here, you have to look towards the side series, Sonic Boom. 3DS Sonic is not real. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was a bad game. All these years later, I still admire the ambition of creating an entirely new side series with Sonic Boom. At the time, they really seemed like they wanted to make this a thing, because releasing alongside that dentist appointment of a Wii U game, Sanzaru Games, the company responsible for the Sly Cooper PS3 games and the Mystery Case Files, the Malgrave incident, you know, everyone's favorite, did exactly the thing I was just complaining about with Generations and Lost World. With Sonic Boom, Shattered Crystal, and years later, Fire and Ice, we have adventures here that do not try to mimic Rise of Lyric. They tell their own stories, combine familiar mechanics along with ones that are exclusive to these games. They take advantage of the hardware they're on by simply having a map on the touchscreen. This is all I wanted. Perhaps I am just far too impressed with the fact that a Sonic Boom game isn't a complete dumpster fire, but I will be damned. The Sonic Boom 3DS duology, it ain't bad. First and foremost, Knuckles looks like he ate bees. That's pretty weird. Second off, when it comes to the gameplay, speed is no longer the forefront here. I get it, it's Sonic, gotta go fast and all that, I understand, but considering the weaker hardware here, it is more important to make Sonic feel like he's fast, while also ensuring that I can, you know, see what I'm running into. Instead, the focus is actually exploration. Keep your eyes on the map at all times. These levels are linear, but they're also pretty big, and there are plenty of things to find within them. This little dash move you can do, swinging from these energy things. The homing attack actually works. That's nice. You can change between different characters on the fly to take advantage of unique abilities. Shattered Crystal, by God, it's actually kind of fun to control. The cutscenes are pretty entertaining as well, surprisingly enough. The TV show was always Sonic Boom's highlight, I understand that, but Rise of Lyric, oh boy, that was not good at all.
There's no time like the present.
Wait, there are presents?
No.
They managed to somehow encompass the TV show's energy with the story here, and I'll be honest, it actually got some chuckles out of me. Bad news? You mean like world peace and an end to hunger and universal healthcare? Oh boy, okay. It's not all great though, levels do tend to overstay their welcome, and instead of boss encounters, there's like this weird linear auto-running thing. Not a fan. All of this would be fine and cement this game as good enough, but because we are not allowed to have nice things, there is one very, very critical flaw. It takes practically no time whatsoever before you are locked out of progression. You see, each level has a number of objectives, usually revolving around finding collectibles, and there is barely any flexibility with what you can choose to do. You will 100% have to go back to previous levels and comb through every nook and cranny just in order to scrounge up enough medals to progress the story, and this really killed my drive to see what else Shattered Crystal had in store. Replayability is a staple of Sonic games, but requiring it for progression? Yeah, that's a big no-no for me. Especially when it's behind some boring minigames too. Come on, man, you were so close and you tripped up right at the finish line. If I were younger and had all the time in the world to kill and this was the game I got for Christmas that year, then I could easily see myself going for as many medals as I needed to because I would just play this game ad nauseum anyway. But now, these constant progress killers really ruin a game for me. I want to see what the rest of the game has in store, but evidently, the game doesn't want me to. Which is a shame because apparently getting 100% completion nets you a sweet dance video. I swear, man, none of this Sonic on 3DS stuff seems real. But in a shocking turn of events, while the main team at Sega would continue on with their lives pretending like Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric never happened, Sanzaru wanted to right the ship. They went to work immediately on a sequel with the intent of fixing all of the issues people had with the first one. We have Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice to show for it. Why does that seem like such a big deal? Fixing games with the sequel should be a normal thing. Sonic should have been doing this all along. Hell, when this game was being developed, they even delayed it in order to put in some extra work. That is pretty unheard of for a Sonic game. It's almost a shame this game never got a PC release. Something about releasing Fire and Ice on Steam is just really funny to me, but I'm also an idiot, so ignore that. Surface level, this is just more of the same, but with a brand new Fire and Ice mechanic. You're constantly letting off one of those two elements as an aura, of which you can swap between on the fly, and this is typically done to assist with some platforming. Water platforms freeze when you're icy, and ice blocks melt when you're fiery, that sort of stuff. It is a pretty nonsensical video gamey gimmick though. It's not even like the story gives you a good reason as to why you guys have it now. Sonic and crew just sorta do. Whatever, shut up and play the game. Now let's just go down the list here. The levels are shorter, the action is more fluid, we get these little challenge areas hidden throughout the stages, there's actual boss fights now that did crash my game once, but only once, and also he like shifts the screen down when you get to the fight. That's really cool, so I'll forgive it. The collectibles are strictly for collecting purposes now and not tied to progression. The in-game cutscenes are now actually animated and not just these visual novel spots. Oh my god, they did it. There's a Sonic Boom game that actually has a lot of effort put into it to make it good. I mean, it's still not remarkable. The rewards for the collectibles are kind of just whatever, but that is why I'm happy I don't need to collect them in the first place. And the Fire and Ice mechanic, while interesting on paper, never really reaches its full potential. For as random as this idea is, I would have liked to see them go further with it. And similar to Shattered Crystal, there is a severe lack of anything memorable when it comes to the level themes and music. Some of the things the Sonic franchise is most known for. I know Boom is trying to be different than the main Sonic stuff, but I don't think that's enough reason to not have good music. I do really respect the developers for definitely trying to make the best out of the situation that they were put in, but at the end of the day, we are still talking about an average to below average 2D platformer on a console littered with them. This was never gonna be able to compete. It kinda goes without saying, but Sonic's outings on the 3DS definitely pale in comparison to his adventures on the DS, in my opinion. At the time, and all these years later, I think the thing that I valued the most is when Sega took the opportunity to do something original for the portable gaming audience, while they were also doing their thing on the main consoles. Even with Chronicles, man, god-awful game, but makes for a hell of a funny story. Sure, we'll never get to see Marine the Raccoon ever again, may she rest in peace, but I will always cherish my time with her. The 3DS games, on the other hand, either piggyback off of what the console games were doing, or do try to do something original, but they fall flat, and even when they do succeed, unfortunately, I don't think anybody cared. Whether they were good or bad, and as gaming shifts further away from the dedicated portable gaming landscape, it is a shame that we will never really get that original vibe with Sonic again. There are obviously Sonic games on the Switch, but let's be honest with ourselves here, it's not quite the same. I hope none of my divisive comments upset any of you greatly, but if they did, I can say one final thing with certainty that we can all agree on. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Thank you, I'm glad we can agree. As a modern-day retro video game compilation, Sonic Origins Plus really fascinates me. You see, I wouldn't be a typical Sonic fan on the internet if this release specifically didn't leave me with a million thoughts. New Knuckles content for CD! Cool! Amy, aka Rosie the Rascal, officially playable for all the games. That's pretty sick. These are things that should have been in the original release, and it's kinda scummy they're paid DLC on top of the base game that's already suffered a bunch of problems, but hey! Amy! And we get a box this time. The new music for Sonic 3 is still pretty bad though. Oh no. The most curious addition though are the addition of the Game Gear games. Hooray? Now this isn't the first time Sega's used these Game Gear games as some sort of big ol' hype bonus. Oh hey, they're unlockable in Sonic Adventure DX. We put 6 of them in Gems Collection. Oh, we apologize for not putting them in Mega Collection, but they're in Mega Collection Plus now. Buy the collection again. I feel like Sega's gaslighting us. Who cares about these games that much? Mega Collection still clears Origins, by the way. For Sonic Origins, though, then yeah, I guess these titles still hold some relevance. I mean, it's kind of weird that we now have access to Game Gear Spinball and not Genesis Spinball, but... It's kind of crazy to think that Sonic's very first handheld adventure was released only a few months after the console game that started it all. And that little handheld, the Game Gear, ended up being home to a whopping 12 games. And considering the Genesis had a handful of games to call its own, all obviously releasing around the same time, Sega was really firing on all cylinders, pumping out Sonic content as much as humanly possible right from the very beginning. And my god, he was just a little boy. Does this not violate child labor laws? Also worth considering, the Master System, Sega's console before the Genesis, had some of the same games as well. It's like if Nintendo made Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo, and then kept making Mario games for the NES. It's really strange when you think about it that way. Although I guess we did get Mario is Missing for the NES. Does that count? I feel like in the entire lineage of Sonic's handheld history, most people are aware of the Game Gear games for sure, and then we just kind of jump forward to Nintendo's handhelds, you know, the Game Boy Advance, the DS, maybe the PSP, there was a game there, but no. In actuality, Sega got away with so much more. So today, let's take a look at every handheld Sonic game there ever was. You know, except for the DS and 3DS stuff, I did that already. And of course, we're gonna be talking about pure handheld consoles here. Not like, oh wow, every single Sonic game is available for a Steam Deck. That's a handheld, let's take a look at all of them. No, we're not doing that. But there is this weird Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog visual novel that's only on Steam. What the hell was this all about? And also, that would technically make Sonic 4 a handheld game, and I don't want to play that game ever again. The Game Gear is quite the interesting beast when it comes to one Sonic Maurice Hedgehog. Of the 12 titles that released under this umbrella, 5 of them are the tried and true side-scrolling platformers that, you know, are what Sonic was most known for at the time. The rest of them are also there. You got Spinball and Mean Bean Machine. These are like the Genesis games, but less. Drift 1 and Drift 2 are pretty decent racing games given the hardware that they're on, and they really don't deserve the hate that they at least used to get. I actually do enjoy these from time to time, outside of the ear-bleeding screech once you finish a race. The same thing goes for Labyrinth, actually. Dumbest idea in the world, okay? Robotnik gave Sonic slowdown boots, so now you gotta go through a labyrinth. Got it. The controls are pretty frustrating at times, there's a lot of flashing lights, so you gotta be careful about that. And yeah, it's pretty damn slow if you're not spin dashing all over the place, but damn it, I don't know. Something about this game is telling me not to hate it, even though it's the dumbest thing ever. And it was also the Game Gear that got Tails a spotlight here. That's pretty interesting. We got the arcadey auto-scroller with Sky Patrol and the pseudo-Metroidvania with Adventure. One game takes advantage of Tails' ability to fly, and the other one takes advantage of Tails' ability to be a nerd and make gadgets. Look at him, what a nerd. Both games also introduce a brand new slate of villains that we haven't seen since, like this witch in Sky Patrol, and this army of bird people in Adventure. Come on now, you mean to tell me that you don't remember Dr. Fukurikov and Bearanger? Some Sonic fan you are. I do get the feeling that a lot of people actually kind of like Tails' Adventure as a bit of a hidden gem, but admittedly, I was never really a fan. Something about the slower pace and the reliance on gadgets, I just never liked how this game played. I mean, if Tails had a game to call his own, this is basically what I would expect and something I would love to see return to one day, but as it currently stands, yeah, sadly can't play this one for too long, sorry about that. I actually like Sky Patrol more. It's not better, I just enjoy playing it more. I don't know why Tails can't stop flying, and he always looks sad and stressed out in this game. I just kind of want to cure his anxiety, man. I've been there. I want to help him out. But then, of course, the games you probably care a lot more about, the actual platformers. Sonic moving left to right at moderately quick speeds, baby! The problem that I used to have with these Game Gear games was always expecting more than what this console was able to provide. Well, these games can never be as good as the Genesis games, right? Why even bother? I was just never able to see these games for what they were, and not for what they weren't. You fast forward to just a few years ago, all of these games are finally out of my backlog, and man, we really range the entire spectrum with these 5 games. You look at Triple Trouble, and you look at Stupid Blast, same console, and it's proof there's a higher power out there that hates us. Sonic 1 and 2 on the Game Gear may seem like just ports of the console games based on their incredibly original titles, but no, they're actually entirely unique adventures. Like in Sonic 2, if you don't fully complete this one, Tails dies. That's not how the console game goes, come on. Really, Tails in Sonic 2 GG is just kinda weird no matter how you slice it. Like, the plot is about saving him from Robotnik, yet he appears on all of the Zone title cards like he's with you the whole time, like what? And in Sonic 1, dear god, where'd his nose go? Ultimately, these games are fine. Sonic 2 definitely strives to be a lot more original than Sonic 1, throwing in entirely new zones filled with brand new enemies, boss fights, and gimmicks, while Sonic 1 maintains a lot of aesthetic similarities with the console version, but hey, bridge and jungle zones are pretty cool, those are new. Really good theme songs too, in fact both games have great soundtracks from top to bottom, many of these songs you do not see in the console games. The problems with these adventures though come down mostly to the Game Gear's screen size, like it's just far too small. There are too many platforming frustrations that are there because you just can't see what's right in front of you. Now luckily, both do have Master System ports. The hardware for both were pretty similar, so the transition is actually pretty seamless. If you are so inclined to play these games, then yeah, the Master System versions are the ones to load up. They make the Game Gear versions just seem like a neat little novelty, and that's about it. They still don't compare to the Genesis games, like, for God's sakes, Sonic 1's got auto-scrolling sections, and I feel pain. But in their own little bubble, they're decent 8-bit Sonic games. And also special shout out to the fan-made remakes of these games too. Not many people know about these, but some fans out there made these great remakes of these two games that aren't necessarily faithful, but I'll be damned if they're not really fun. We got widescreen for both of them so you can actually see what you're doing, that's a godsend. Sonic 1 has newly added zones from the Genesis games like Marble Zone. Sonic 2 has the buddy mechanic, that's pretty cool. There are extra characters aplenty for both of these games like Ray in Sonic 1, that's pretty surreal. The gimmicks that were already there got some polish, and hey, some new ones too. What is this surfing nonsense in Oil Ocean? Okay, this isn't faithful in the slightest, cause like, also look at that, it's supersonic. What? Damn it, it's not authentic, but it's still pretty cool. These fan games are getting updated all the time. If you're looking for a Sonic experience you likely haven't checked out before, definitely give these a go. And hey, while we're at it, check out this hack of Sonic 1 on the Game Gear that changes all of the aesthetics and music to be that of the Genesis games. Really got no other options when it comes to interesting ROM hacks for the Game Gear titles, but hey, pretty impressive how they got this game to look while still being a Game Gear game. Need to remind you, Sonic Blast exists. Let's move on to Sonic Chaos and Triple Trouble. Now these are where the Game Gear shines for me. Two adventures that completely stand out on their own, no confusion with names that match the console versions. We got level designs and gimmicks that feel like they were more naturally built with the Game Gear in mind to limit frustration. These are pretty good. I mean, yeah, Chaos did drop on the Master System too, but listen, I mean what I said. I can play the Game Gear game and not want to die, okay? That's a positive. Of the two, I do give the notch to Triple Trouble because Chaos, it doesn't really matter what console you play this on, it almost feels like an overcorrection at times to the frustration of the earlier titles. This one is almost too easy. The levels are really straightforward and short, the bosses are a joke. Finding the Chaos Emerald in the stages is the only real challenge. Like listen, I didn't say this game is great, I just didn't hate myself while playing it. Triple Trouble is the absolute star though. There's an actual plot this time around, pitting you against Robotnik, Knuckles, and a brand new character, Fang the Sniper, or Knack the Weasel, if you like getting into internet arguments. Levels are a lot more complex, gimmicks are actually functional and fun, the game looks and sounds super good. Triple Trouble is just a really solid time from start to finish, and easily the Game Gear's best. But, you know, I would of course be remiss if I didn't mention the incredible 16-bit remake as well by Noah Copeland, taking everything that game had and making it feel like the Sonic 4 that we never got. The Sonic 4 that we never got. A Sonic Chaos remake was in the works as well to make things look and sound a lot like Mania, but unlike Triple Trouble, this one isn't complete. What's out there though shows a lot of great promise. That demo is really fun. Remakes and reimaginings of the past 4 Game Gear adventures existing and all representing their source material in different ways is super cool, and it shows that the Game Gear truly did provide something that all Sonic fans should experience one way or another. Unlike... Oh god, I'm gonna vomit. Oh god, what is this? Okay, let's take a step back here and try to be logical. I think they were trying to make a Sonic game that looks like Donkey Kong Country? Yeah, that's the only praise I got for Sonic Blast. You may say that wasn't praise. Yes. Alright, so yeah, cat's out of the bag on this one. Sonic Blast is one of the worst looking games I've ever seen in my life. But more importantly, how does it play? Oh well, let me tell you, nothing quite beats the feeling of playing this game for a bit and then turning the Game Gear off. It just feels bad too, man. Like none of the levels feel special, controlling the characters feels bad, the bosses are badly designed. Yeah, Sonic 1 and 2 were frustrating at times, but this just feels completely lazy. Maybe this was just the product of trying to wow people with the graphics. Oh, look what's possible on the Game Gear. I mean, 3D Blast on console was full 3D. Maybe we can get something similar on the handheld. But no. This is a f***ing atrocity. It goes Triple Trouble, Chaos, 1, 2, literally anything else, and then maybe Sonic Blast if there's alcohol involved. But even then, I'm gonna just stick to the alcohol. Preferably rubbing alcohol. I'll drink that instead of playing this. Looking at the Game Gear lineup as a whole, it's definitely there. Am I being too harsh? From this point forward, Sega would jump around to as many different devices as possible. You know, they would stay in the console market for a few more years, but the Game Gear died in 1997. That's not gonna stop them from making a handheld Sonic game anyway. Sonic Pocket Adventure for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, a classic Sonic game but with the modern green eye Sonic, because we want fans in 10 or 20 years to have arguments on the internet about eye color. The N-Gage, this is another fascinating handheld. Only lasted a couple of years on the market, it had less than 100 games available to it, and most of them were just pushed out by SNK, the team who put out the console itself. And hey, it's got a cool clicky circle pad. This device is just fun. And Sonic has a game on here? Yeah, it's still kinda odd. Developed by the people who would go on to form Dimps, the team behind the Advance trilogy, the Rush trilogy. Yeah, that's where it ends. While Pocket Adventure's existence is certainly strange, the game itself, I mean, yeah, it's a Sonic game, alright. Like, it's almost a note-for-note reimagining of Sonic 2 with music from Sonic 3, and that's about it. The Sonic 2 half-pipe special stages are here, the bosses are new, I appreciate that. Partway through, we mess with the entire idea of this being Sonic 2 and throw Knuckles into the mix, and probably the neatest little nugget of information of all, Robotnik starts off in his classic outfit, and by the end, he's full-blown egg gentleman. You throw in the classic-looking Sonic the Hedgehog with the modern green eyes, and this game almost acts like a transition between the two distinct eras of this franchise. And besides, I know we're all thinking the same thing here, there simply aren't enough versions of Sonic 2 out there. What's another one to throw into the mix? That Sega decided to not throw into the Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection Volume 2 even though the Mega Man fighting game is in there, and we could have had artwork of Mega Man and Sonic on the same box art, and that would have been so cool. Why do you hate money, Sega? Clearly this team did a good enough job the first time around, so when Sega exited the console market, alongside the GameCube re-release of Sonic Adventure 2 known as SA2 Battle, which is still an all-timer Sonic game, I'm tired of these arguments saying otherwise, the Game Boy Advance would now be the home for more traditional 2D Sonic, with the Advance trilogy from Dimps, aka Sonic 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, I'm one of those people. Yo, check out this sick strategy guide, by the way, for both Adventure 2 and Advance 1. You flip it and then it turns into the other game. This is so cool. You know Sonic Advance 1, right? Brought to us by THQ. These games sometimes get a lot of criticism for a multitude of reasons, usually stemming from Dimp's tendency to fill their level designs with bottomless pits, and their pretty obtuse ways of obtaining each game's Chaos Emeralds. Definitely not a fan of that part. Both of those statements are valid. These games are far from perfect. Like Angel Island from Advance 1 is one of the most painful levels you could ever experience when it comes to screwing up your jumps. There are bottomless pits. You know what? The entire level is basically a bottomless pit. But call it blind nostalgia if you want. I love all three of these games. I always appreciated it when a long-running franchise took their opportunities on handhelds to try something a bit different. And with each entry in this trilogy, the core gameplay loop, pun entirely intended, is as Sonic as you could expect. But while 1 mimics the traditional flow of the games that preceded it, 2 would go for pure unadulterated speed. A lot of actual platforming challenge goes out the window, for sure, but this was one of the first times I ever played a Sonic game and really felt like going fast was the primary goal, something Dimps would very clearly continue with when it comes to the Rush games later on. And then Advance 3, well, this is almost a combination of both, being super fast but bringing in more intricate level design that can be traversed in a plethora of ways due to the new buddy mechanic where you can partner any 2 characters together, usually offering slightly modified movesets. And hey, different playable characters in general, I mean, yeah, we had Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles before, that makes sense, but playable Amy? I'm down with that. And we got newcomer Cream the Rabbit in Advance 2, with her evil Chow of Doom, Cheese, that can kill anything in sight with the press of a button. Watch out for Cheese, is very dangerous Cheese. Cream is adorable and deadly, I love it. Man, the soundtracks are really good, I've always loved the sprites and the overall aesthetics, like, yeah, if we want to pull out the old analysis machine, a lot of flaws will start to show. Again, these games ain't perfect. Getting all the Chaos Emeralds sometimes is very, very annoying, and finding all the Chow in Advance 3, that sucks, okay? You know what? I'll say it, that sucks. It sucks a whole lot, not a fan. But coming from the games on the Game Gear, which mostly felt like, yep, this is Sonic alright, it's the Advance games that for the first time in this video, I feel like we're really trying something a little bit different to stand out. And considering what would happen soon after, we need to appreciate this era before the nuclear bomb went off. Also, the mini Chow Gardens? That was pretty cool. You can raise a bunch of Chow in a console game like Adventure 2 Battle and throw one of them into your GBA to raise it on the go. Even play a little mini game if you're feeling up to it. Certainly not deep at all, by any stretch, but quite frankly, any title with GameCube GBA connectivity are inherently interesting to me. And also the fact that the handheld version of Sonic Generations didn't show respect to any of the handheld Sonic games outside of Rush and I guess Colors DS is still a disgusting crime, and I'm still mad, okay? A modern form of Music Plant and a boss battle against Gemerl in 3D would have been so sick. You can tell I'm a Sonic fan because I keep giving the multi-million-dollar company ideas on how to make money. But of course, the GBA wasn't just the Advanced trilogy. Can't forget about Sonic Pinball Party, baby! It's a party now! It's a video game with a story where your friends are evil and you gotta pinball in order to rescue them. Video games are stupid, but look, knights. Sonic Battle though, now this is an underappreciated gem. Listen, alright, a fighting game on the GBA, you're already going into this with limited expectations. Look at Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu. What on earth is this? What they managed to achieve here is actually pretty good because they went away from the typical 1v1 formula. You got nearly a dozen characters to choose from with this interesting choose your attack loadout before you spawn in mechanic. One character allows for full customization with a ton of unlockable attack pieces, and it all takes place in 3D environments that look pretty solid for the hardware. There's even a story mode that... Okay, now this is where the game flounders, I'm not gonna lie. The interactions are pretty spot on for how the characters were portrayed at the time, with a lot of the plot focused around this new mysterious robot, Emerl, but gameplay-wise, the difficulty is pretty inconsistent, randomly getting into matches that are either surprisingly difficult or take shockingly long for no real reason, and things begin to drag pretty quickly when it comes to the plot, especially since there's this whole world's traversal thing too that really doesn't add much to the overall experience. It's just kind of there, and now you can run around and... yeah, cool. But hey, the core mechanics are fun. Find some friends with multiple GBAs and link cables in the 2020s and you're in for a good time. Good luck. Hell, at the very least, I can appreciate the extra Emerl lore to amplify Gemerl in Advance 3. The long, continuous lore is what I play these Sonic games for, after all. Okay, fine. Did you know that Sonic Genesis released at the same time as Sonic 06? Vote to wipe November 2006 from history? God, what a disgusting abomination this is. How could Sega fail a simple port this badly? Like, okay, I get it, we all make fun of Sonic games here. It's annoying to see the same bad Sonic game over and over again, but God, it still blows my mind. The mechanics are terrible, the music is horrendous, there's slowdown at every single frame, it's quite frankly impressive. Oh dear God, and good luck in the special stages. Ooh, anniversary mode? It's just the same game with the spin dash. You mean you don't normally take out the first boss this way? Listen, for all the slack I give Sonic 4, maybe I'm being too harsh. You know, it certainly doesn't control very well, but it plays a lot better than this. Rise of Lyric, Black Knight, Forces, hell, let's throw Schoolhouse into the mix. For my money, Sonic Genesis is the worst game in this entire franchise. At least some level of effort went into the other bad games, this is just the lowest of the low, and even further proof there's a higher power out there smiting us for even liking this blue hedgehog in the first place. Like dude, Sonic Spinball and the Sega Smash Pack for the same console plays a lot better than this. Oh my God, how embarrassing. Massive, massive shoutouts to the ROM hacker Stealth that managed to do what Sega don't. That didn't sound right. And not only get Sonic 1 fully functional on this console, but even throw in Tails and Knuckles just to show off. Now granted, this is a tech demo, it's just Green Hill Zone and a couple of special stages, but hey, just to show off that this was actually possible if Sega cared at the time, it's impressive. It's no surprise that Stealth would go on to work on Sonic Mania. Dude knows his stuff. Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket Color, Game Boy Advance. The next logical step would be the DS and the 3DS, home to plenty of Sonic games. Well, like I said, I already did those, and you should watch those videos if you haven't already, after this one, of course. But, to quickly recap, nice, kill me. Oh man, oh God, oh man. You know what, not the worst thing. And now, as we all know, around the same time as the DS, another handheld entered the scene that had a Sonic game to call its very own. A competitor with another Sonic game? That's crazy. Of course, I'm talking about the N-Gage. You remember Sonic N, right? Sonic N, huh? What a title. If you don't remember the N-Gage, then I'm envious of you. Though you did miss this hilarious saga where everyone called this thing a taco. That was a good time, what a meme. All you really need to know about this thing is that to swap out cartridges, you have to take off the back and remove the battery first. Name a worse idea. As for the game, Sonic N, well, it's just Sonic Advance. I mean, the resolution is destroyed because you're forcing a landscape resolution into a portrait frame, but hey, if you wanted to control Sonic with a number pad and not a D-pad, hopefully not have a Chow Garden since that's been removed also, then this is the game for you. But okay, fine, on a serious note, can't forget about the PSP. Two little Sonic games grace this handheld, the Sonic Rivals Duo. And I'll be honest, I don't really have much to say on these. We have 2 adventures, each with multiple characters to choose from, but really, the gameplay remains identical the entire way through, which yes, is very much a Sonic thing, but here, I don't know, it's missing something. This game is missing a little something. The primary concept here is it's a race against another character, and you just keep pushing forward, hopefully faster than your opponent, and that's it. Like, levels do occasionally have some gimmicks, and you can actively affect said opponent if you run into them, and when there's a boss fight, you'll go against them with your rival, so like, there is some thought put into this whole idea, but both of these just really feel underwhelming to me. The perfect type of game where I see people go, oh man, I used to play this all the time as a kid, and then you go back to it and you say, oh, well, you know, at least I'm nostalgic. Credit to Rivals 2, adding more abilities for each character to stand out from the others, that's nice, and even having full voice acting for the cutscenes, I like that. But it's clear that the DS had the much better treatment between the two. Though, I do love Race to Win, the theme song for Rivals 2, one of the cheesiest songs I've ever heard in my life, but damn it if it isn't fun to load up on my millionth replay of Generations. And hey, the PSP at least had a better version of Sonic 1, courtesy of the Sega Genesis collection, so hey, point over the GBA. That collection also has Rystar included, and that game's sick. Alright, what's next? Oh, what, you thought I was gonna forget to mention Sonic Jam on the Gamecom too? This f***ing thing? They tried to get Sonic 3 running on a damn calculator, and I don't know what's worse, this game's frame rate, or the fact Resident Evil 2 is also on this device. Ooh, Sonic X on the Leapster? Oh my god, there's an actual game based on the Sonic anime? What? And it's an educational game, god. What's crazy though is they added more animations to the Sonic 3 sprites. Listen, I gotta give this game something. Oh man, Sonic on the Leapfrog Didge! What's a Didge? Yeah, it turns out that Leapfrog, a company known for releasing educational products and software, released a handheld called the Didge, which housed educational software. Why did more than one person look at Sonic the Hedgehog and think, yeah, he should teach my kid English? And yeah, it's bad. And also, it's Sonic 3 Sonic running through the zones of Sonic 1 and 2, and damn it, the lack of consistency is tearing me apart. Sonic's handheld history, much like his history in general, is like just this crazy and all over the place, and you never know what to expect with every individual game. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Looking at all of these handhelds, Sega managed to release well over 20 different titles. We had platformers based off of console games, we had platformers that were totally original, a bunch of spin-offs. Sonic Genesis. But hey, hold on, now it's time for the really fun part. Look at the time bar down there. We ain't even close to done. Sega is beholden to no company, so of course, this entire time, they've also been making Sonic games for phones. Oh god. Yo, they got Go Sonic Goo MLG on this? The fact this has over 6,000 positive ratings is honestly alarming. Just like the proper handheld consoles, Sonic has had quite the prolific career on mobile. I mean, nowadays we got a few notable titles that are actually pretty solid for what they set out to do. Sonic Dash is definitely the most notable one of those auto-scrollers that are everywhere on mobile devices. Hell, at least for Sonic, this format makes sense. Definitely more so than when Crash gave it a shot, especially considering Sonic managed to outlive that Bandicoot since that game already got delisted, so rest in peace, I hate mobile gaming. And yeah, it's fine. Whenever you're on the toilet and don't feel like reading the back of the shampoo bottle, Sonic Dash has you covered. And the events that they roll out for this are crazy, like they had a Pac-Man event, a Sonic movie event, so many costumes, it's insane, like including references to Unleashed, Black Knight, Sonic Prime, Tangle and Whisper from the comics, Bongo the Monkey from Danimals. Oh, there's even a Sonic Dash 2, fully dedicated to Sonic Boom. Were they so embarrassed by Boom that they had to push it off to the side instead of just making additional skins for the first game? Sonic with bandages, get that away from me, I want Bongo instead. We can't have Boom Knuckles and Bongo in the same game, that's too much power. And there's yet another one, Sonic Forces Speed Battle, where it's almost the same exact concept, except now you're racing other players. Many of the costumes and the characters overlap too, so why not just have a multiplayer mode for Sonic Dash? I'm so confused. It's money, isn't it? It's just about the money, so Sega can get money from multiple apps instead of just one. It's mobile gaming, I got it. Shout out to Punk Zaz. Sonic Jump, an endless jumper. Sonic Jump Fever, the same thing, but with some competitive multiplayer elements that's now delisted, cool. Sonic Runner's Adventure, a level-based auto-runner that lacks a unique art style and features a modern Sonic with oddly short quills. That'll get people mad in the comments. The original Sonic Runners, and Endless Runner with an infinitely better art style, but this one is also delisted. interested. God, I feel so much pain. Man, come on now, let's not act like mobile games aren't still their own breed compared to proper console and handheld games. Rather than providing anything meaningful, these are meant to act as an incredibly simple and accessible way to keep you from being distracted and to keep a brand active in your mind while also squeezing out some money from you, pennies at a time. If you look at me dead in the eyes and tell me that one of your favorite Mario Karts is Tour, I'm gonna think you're a cop. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. There are a few other Sonic games on mobile, like the remasters of Sonic 1 and 2 that people were begging for console ports for years before they finally gave them to us with Sonic Origins, which was right after those mobile games got decompiled, so we got better PC versions with mod support because life is funny that way, sorry Sega. Sonic Racing, yeah, that's the whole title. An entirely unique entry in this racing series that's Apple Arcade exclusive for no good reason, being a super simplified version of Team Sonic Racing, which not enough people played. Sonic 4 Episode 1 got a mobile port with exclusive levels that are total garbage, and that's all the time I'm going to give this game. And arguably the most interesting of all, a few Sonic at the Olympic Games titles. No plumbers allowed, I guess. For what it's worth, Tokyo 2020, it ain't all that bad. Converting a bunch of Olympic-based minigames to touch controls, it works pretty well. Hey, look at that, Sonic Jump. Yeah, I'm convinced Sega just wants me to know pain. Now, this was released alongside the actual console game that featured another certain character that should not be named, so a mobile version is the epitome of a shameless cash grab. This isn't like the DS and 3DS versions of the other games. They actually put some effort into those. This, it just kind of is. And it's fine. The same can be said for the Winter Olympics back in 2010, and even further back with the original 2008 Summer Olympics back before phones had a brain. Seeing the advanced sprites thrown into an official Java-based minigame collection, it's kind of surreal, in not a good way. It's weird there was once a time where Sega looked at this and went, yeah, that'll work. The thing is though, this hedgehog hole goes deep. It's easy to forget that all mobile gaming before smartphones was kind of like this. Having anything running on the same machine that gave us is a miracle. Like, there was this weird port of Sonic 1, right? It had to be split into 2 parts. Like, you would finish Springyard Zone in part 1, and then the game would just end. God, what a time. And throughout the 2000s, Sega actually released a shocking amount of phone games. Some of them did get worldwide releases, but a majority of them were part of a Japanese exclusive service known as Sonic Cafe, where players would pay a small monthly fee to gain access to the entire library of available games. And now we know where Xbox got the Game Pass idea from. Sonic Cricket, Sonic Darts, the original Sonic Jump. Can't forget about Sonic Golf, definitely not forgetting Shadow Shoot. I could say that you just had to be there, but you know what? No, I don't think you did. I think I would much rather play those crazy McDonald's Sonic games. Remember those from back in the day? Of course you do. There was that one Pakistan commercial where the guy went, "Sonic Skateboard!" Iconic, absolutely iconic. Thank you, Pakistan. Oh my god, who is that? Oh yeah, now we're really getting into it. In case you didn't think having 2 versions of Sonic Unleashed was enough, Loft gave us a 3rd, exclusive for Java phones. Can't get much more morbidly curious than this, because you know what? I'll be totally honest, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this ain't the worst thing I've ever played. You got original sprite work, original level designs, both the hedgehog and werehog mechanics have been adapted to the side-scrolling style in not the worst way. You know, I'm not about to say this is a crazy Sonic hidden gem locked behind old phones, and gosh, if only game preservation were more important and we had a modern port of this on Steam. But hey, look at all of these credits here. These people are responsible for making the not worst Sonic game ever made, so credit where it's due. Thank you guys. You did a not terrible job, which is impressive for Loft, because terrible is all they really know. If there's one major takeaway from all this, is that for Sonic on handhelds, Sega knew no bounds, man. They would go into their board meetings and go, hey, can we put this hedgehog in some software real quick? That'd be really cool. And they would go, oh, wait a minute, we just shipped 30 different games. You should have asked us sooner. Dude, some of these old mobile games, they look like these cheap bootlegs, and it's just, oh, I forgot the handheld bootlegs. Dude, of course, the Game Boy Classic, Sonic Adventure 7. What happened to 3 through 6? It's terrible. You see, you're the fool here. You may have gone your entire life not thinking that even the Game Boy had some Sonic games because Sega had its own console. Why would they put them on the Nintendo console? Well, oh boy, would you ever be wrong here, buddy? I mean, hell, if we're throwing fan games into this conversation, why not include these too? They may have been fans when they made these games in their Chinese sweatshops. I don't know. I'm still waiting on the developer documentary. Gaming bootlegs is an entire other world that we can get into, and it's just a friggin' minefield as far as the eye could see, but it will always be interesting. Back when I was first checking out this magical thing called the internet when I was a wee little kid, I saw this title screen for something called Sonic the Hedgehog 4 on the Super Nintendo. My young mind was blown. I didn't know there was a Sonic 4, just to find out it's a garbage sprite swap of Speedy Gonzales, Los Gatos Bandidos. My young mind was then pissed. Ooh, Sonic 3D Blast 5, back where it all started. Let's look at the technological leap between 3D Blast 5 and Adventure 7. Simply going from 5 to 6 was gonna undersell just how big of a jump this was. Dude, and do not get me started on Sonic Adventure 8. Holy sh**. Did you know there was also a fan game called Sonic Blasting Adventure that's a remake of all 3 of these games? God, life really is funny sometimes. As if Sonic's history isn't already this crazy massive spaghetti just thrown up against the wall, re-experiencing every one of these mobile games just really reconfirms that Sega had no idea what they were doing with this hedgehog from the very beginning, and I gotta tell ya, I love him as a result. For better or for worse, every Sonic game provided a unique experience. It wasn't like Mario, where they would compile all of these great ideas into one groundbreaking platformer that they can ride off of for years to come. If someone had an idea for this blue hedgehog, damn it, they made a game about it. Now certainly, smaller, more unique Sonic titles will continue to release until the end of time. We still got some semblance of that right here. That ain't stopping anytime soon, and I'm very excited for Sonic Superstars. But you know what? At the end of the day, thanks to Sonic Origins Plus releasing on all major consoles, a whole new generation can experience Sonic Blast for the first time. Thank God.